Hello Messians, I'm here with a tutorial today about how you can use text in your art journal. I'm just going to show you a whole bunch of different ways that I like to do it. I've got a little handmade journal here and I thought I would basically fill this journal from beginning to end with different techniques just so that you can see how they might all look together, and also because I really like making individual journals. So I'm starting with this pen. It is a pigment liner and it is waterproof, so it kind of works like a permanent marker, except not exactly. So it's working quite well for me to write on this piece of tracing paper which I've bound into the book, and what I'm doing here is just some stream of consciousness writing, and that kind of, it works partly as journaling but also as the text becomes like a pattern, so it turns into what is essentially a piece of pattern paper. And doing it on vellum means that it acts as an overlay for both of the pages that are on either side of it. So that's one of my favourite ways to include text immediately in an art journal. And I also really like the way that you get to be quite wordy with this one rather than just using individual words or phrases, which is generally what I lean towards otherwise. I also like to bind book pages into my handmade journals, and I've done that with this one as well. And I'm going to work on this one by turning it into a nice page to look through that semi-opaque text page with. So I'm putting some flowers on it, and as you can see I've put gesso over the top of the text so you can still see the printed text. It's just muted right down, so you've got the effect of words there without your eye being drawn to the actual meaning of the individual words, which is another fun way to include text in your journal. So I've just put some layers of paper and flowers over that, and it looks nice when it's peeking through that original page. And now I'm thinking about what's going to be on the other side, and I have this coloured paper here, and what I'm doing is I'm just doing some writing here in just sort of like a cursive font, and I'm just doing that in pencil, and then I'm going to get a piercing tool and this mat, and I'm going to pierce holes all the way along the lines that I have drawn. And I'm going to then, after I've done that, which is quite quick but I'm just going to speed it up, I'm going to get an eraser and erase the lines, because I'm going to stitch over them, and once you've stitched it's impossible to erase, so you have to just do that first. So there are all the lines. Here I'm erasing it, and then I'm going to stitch just using a back stitch and some embroidery floss. This embroidery floss comes in 6 strands, and I'm just breaking it in half so that I'm working with 3 strands at a time. That process takes, 10 to 15 minutes for me. It's not super time consuming, but I will cut that out so that you don't have to watch me make every single stitch. But yes, I have just stitched the word you there, and it's nice and bold, and I could just leave that as it is, but I am going to come back to it later and make that page a bit more interesting. But for now, I'm just using this stitched part as a placeholder for what I'm going to do with the rest of that page. When I'm working in a journal like this, I do like to sort of flip through. I don't work through chronologically because I get different ideas as I go along, and then some pages I want to reference back to them in different parts of it. So it changes. So with the stitching, you can see obviously the back of the page, and it's messy. So I've just got this nice piece of paper that I got out of a magazine with a pretty flower on it, and I've just stuck that down over the stitching. And I just wanted to add a tiny bit of text to that, so I'm using this sticker, and it's just a transparent acetate sticker, and it's got just a simple phrase on it. And when you put it on a page like that where it's really it's the only text, your eye's really drawn to it. So that's another interesting way of adding text to a page. On this facing page, I'm taking a totally opposite approach. I'm actually making the text really big and bold, and I'm making it stand out against a totally plain background. I'm cutting the letters out, and I'm cutting some from this kind of shiny rose gold paper, and the rest I'm cutting out of a pink and cream patterned paper. And this is a really great way of making a quote or a phrase really stand out. It has a lot of impact when you do it like this, because each of the letters is really chunky, and it just I don't know, I really like the way that this looks, especially in comparison to those tiny text pages. Like, it adds a nice layer of contrast there. So I'm cutting these all out by hand, and obviously I've sped that process up quite a lot in the video, and I'm using offset tweezers to hold the pieces, the letters still while I use a glue pen to stick them down, because that helps me to hold them still and also just place them on the page exactly where I want them to go. So that was quite straightforward. This page is going to be a little bit more detailed. I have this selfie that I took of myself, strangely enough, and I've got this bit of paper here which I tore out of a magazine, and it's just got some interesting words on it basically, and it's small font, and it's just like a piece of informative text from a magazine. And you can see I'm putting sticky tape over it, and each of those pieces are slightly overlapping each other so that they create a solid sheet of tape. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in this bowl. This is called the transfer method, and if you like the way that this looks, there is another class that Get Messy offers, and I will make sure, you should make sure you enroll in that one if you like the look of this, because it shows you how to do it, as well as all the different ways you can use this method in your art journal. But I'm just doing it really simply here. So what I'm doing is I've put it in the water, and it's causing the paper to come away, and it's left the text, because that's it's the toner from a laser printed piece of paper, and that stays attached to the stickiness of the tape, while the paper doesn't dissolve, it just goes all pulpy and just comes away from the stickiness. So that becomes an overlay to go over the top of this photo. So it's a really great way to add layering to a page, and so that's what I'm doing here. So I'm just trimming this photo down, and I'm going to cut around it just so that it's an interesting shape rather than just a square. I thought about tearing it, but the paper was too thick, so I'm just cutting instead. And then I want to put something pretty in behind it, because obviously this way of including the text is a layering, so I thought I'd lean into that and add several layers to this page. And I really like this corner of this vintage kind of, it's a plate out of a vintage sort of horticultural book, and it's got these really nice flowers on it. I think they're irises, and I just thought it would look nice layered with this photo, and then layering the text on top of that again. So I'm just going to stick that down with some double-sided tape. And then, that's right, I added another layer in here just to, again, lean into that layering, and that is just some yellow tissue paper. So I've stapled, and then I'm sticking with more double-sided tape and putting that down. And the good thing about that transfer piece is that because it's on sticky tape, a lot of the stickiness actually stays, it's retained, so I can stick that down without needing to use any other kind of adhesive. I'm just trying to put it on nice and straight, and that will stay put. So I'll just trim the edges there, and that is pretty much a completed journal page there. And I think the layered text looks quite cool. This here is one of my absolute favourite ways to use text in an art journal. This is, I think originally it's called Blackout poetry, and you use a marker to black out most of the words on a page, and then what's left creates a poem or a thought or an idea. I like doing it with white gesso, because then the words stand out, and it's not as heavy as a page covered in black marker. So what I've done is I found the words that I want to use to make my little collection of words, and then I have sort of lightly outlined them with pencil, and then I am going to paint all around with white gesso. So the words really stand out. You still get that sort of shadowed effect like I showed you before in that other page, where you can sort of see the text in behind, like it's there, but your eye isn't drawn to the meaning of the words. You just get that kind of the hint of it. And then of course you have the words standing out, which they convey an idea or a thought or a poem or whatever you want it to be. Now I have this plate, which is from an old book of nursery rhymes, and it's got a woman there looking out her door she's holding a lamp, and I think it's meant to be a warm and homey type picture, but I wanted to change the meaning and make it a little bit more sinister. So I found a phrase sticker which I've trimmed down, and I'm changing the meaning of it, and I'm just going to stick it over her face. And that's a really simple use of text to really totally change the meaning of a page, and I love doing that. I'm a very minimal art journaler, and if I can create an impactful statement or change an image in a meaningful way, then I really like doing that, and so that's what I've done there. This is another page which I didn't get to show you the process of, but I basically put down some gesso, did a little bit of stamping, and then stuck a cutout piece over the top of it. And repeat stamping is another really fun way to put some words in your journal. Now I have another piece of this vintage book paper, and I don't really want to use that for the words, so I've put a bit of gesso over it, and again they're peeking out a little bit from underneath, and then I'm putting this small envelope in, and I find putting things in envelopes is a nice way of including text or journaling that you might like to keep hidden, or that you don't want to be front and center in your journal. And so this is just me adding a little bit of something in there that is going to be more interesting if it is tucked away and then pulled out. It makes your journal more interactive, and it gives a different layer of meaning to the words that you're putting in there. So now I'm putting some more gesso down on this page. Gesso, as you can tell, is one of my favourite supplies to use in art journaling. And I'm putting that down on there. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to add some words with some alpha stickers. So those of you who are also scrapbookers or memory keepers, I know there's a big overlap of us in the art journaling community as well. We often have a whole bunch of these kinds of things in our stash, and they are often varying in size and shape and colour and all that kind of stuff, so they can be a great resource to use in your art journal. And I love using really big ones like this to really, again, make an impact. And these ones are really fun because they are they're not chunky, they're not like chipboard. There is a little bit of height and texture to them, but not so much that it's going to make the journal like super unwieldy or make it difficult for me to work on other pages. And yeah, I want them to really stand out, so all I'm doing is cutting out this flower and sticking it down next to them, and I think that kind of complements the words rather than takes away from them, and they look good. Now I've decided that I don't want to use that back page, so I'm just sticking it down onto the back cover, and I'm fine with that. And because I really liked those letters, I've decided that I want to repeat them on a different page. I did want to add some more text to this one, so I've come back to it and just decided to put some of those down there as well. Now I'm coming back to this stitched page, and I felt that I wanted these stitched words to stand out some more, and this stitched word, and I also wanted to make it look a little bit more mixed media-y. So I've gone over it again with gesso, and I've let that dry, and then I have put down some gold, it's called Colour Shine by Hardy Swap, and it's basically just some gold splattering, which just adds a nice little bit of colour in there, and I've put another phrase sticker over the top, so it's just got a layered look to it there. And those are all my pages. So I hope this has given you some ideas about how you can use text in your own art journals. Yeah, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!